Hey guys, I'm here in the Chicago Music Exchange. Guess where that is? It's in Chicago. Maybe the most impressive store I've been in yet. If you are ever in the Chicago area, you need to come here. And I was so inspired by all the awesome different instruments that I decided to do a special edition of my Legendary Licks series. These are legendary licks every guitar player should know, because this is a store that every guitar player should try and visit once in their life. Just so you know, all the guitars that I'm going to be playing in this video are all exclusive to Chicago Music Exchange. So these are exclusive builds by Gibson and Fender, and that's why they're so special. So I'm going to put the serial numbers, so if you're ever in the area and you come to the store, you can play the same guitars that I played if they're not sold already. I'm going to kick things off with a Jimmy Page lick from the Whole Lotta Love guitar solo, and I'm going to show you the exact lick that I'm talking about. So a lot of great licks in there, but the one that you should know, and this is sort of going to be the criteria for all the licks going forward, these are licks that you can put in various different situations. So the one lick that I really love from this guitar solo, I mean, they're all awesome, but the one that you can get the most use out of, in my opinion, is this one right here. And the reason I like that lick is because when you're in a pentatonic position, I think this one is just right there under your fingertips. So just how the pentatonic scale is right here. You can think of this lick as 2 whole steps up from this finger right here when you're at the top of this scale position. So we go up 1 step, 2 steps, and then this is going to be a whole step bend. So any minor key that you're in, you can always go 2 whole steps up from that minor third, and it's going to apply. So say we're in the key of A, here's the minor third, we go up 2 whole steps, and then same lick. Say we're in the key of C. So that is why I love that particular lick, because no matter what key you're in, it's just always right there and it always sounds awesome. All right, this next lick is from the Hotel California solo. And did you know that the song Hotel California is basically just a bad Yelp review with an amazing guitar solo in the middle? This is one of my favorite guitar licks, and it is, again, applicable in many different situations. That's what we're going for with these licks. Licks that you can steal and put into other musical situations. So the lick that I'm talking about goes like this. I'll play that again slowly so you can see the mechanics going on. So you either attack this A note, bending up to a B, or don't attack it. Either way is fine. It's not necessarily the lick that I like to copy as much as it is the technique. So say we're in the key of G minor, we can bend starting on the 6th and do the same exact motion. And this is a Hendrixism, and you know, obviously it's in the Hotel California solo as well. A lot of different great guitar players have utilized this motion, and it is absolutely something that every guitar player should know, in my opinion. We have basically a half step bend on the 5th fret of the B string. And while this bend is up in the air, we grab the G string on the 5th fret and come down with that half bend. So when you make this bend on the B string, you grab the G string without making any noise and simultaneously bend it up, and that's what you catch on the way down. And in the Hotel California solo, it's actually a whole step bend. So you can do a whole step or a half step, doesn't matter. I kind of prefer the half step. It's a little bit more gritty in my opinion. Moving on. All right, this lick is from a ZZ Top song called Lagrange. Lagrange? Lagrange? How do you say that? I find with certain blues licks, like the category that this falls into, where each guitar player is a little bit unique with how they articulate certain notes. So I'm more or less gonna copy the lick, but it's gonna end up being my own style because of the nature of this lick, and that is exactly why it's on this list, because you can sort of manipulate it to how your playing style is, and that is obviously built upon who your influences are and things like that. So more or less, this is the lick. Here is the meat of the lick that I think is really worth learning. This flat 5 note we have, that is really the crux and what makes this so cool sounding, because without that note it would sound like kind of basic, but when we add that flat 5 note, it really just adds a different character, the blues note, if you will, that just brings this phrase to a different level. And the bends in sequence obviously will add different emotions to how the lick feels. So that was what I was talking about when I say every guitar player will play this lick a little bit differently. It's a very universal lick, but I find my favorite version of it, at least one of my favorite versions, is in the solo to Lagrange, where Billy Gibbons starts going. So the mechanics of this, obviously we're kind of seeing a pattern here, the pattern of the minor pentatonic root position. So we're bending on the 10th fret of the G string, and then we have this classic 8 bar. And this first phrase happens in unison, so we actually hit 3 strings at once. Depending on how slow you bend it, will kind of dictate how the phrase feels. And then here's the little trickery that happens. So we can kind of break this up. So the first part would be, and then the second part would be, and you can really just stop right there and get that under your fingers, and then sort of see where your own style takes you. You can actually choose to bend on the flat 5, so we get this kind of thing. But no matter how it turns out, it usually always sounds good. And again, whatever key you want. You get the point. Moving on. All right, this next lick is really more of a note that I think is very instructive for any guitar player. If you had to say who has the best bends ever, well, I think you're thinking David Gilmour, and you would be correct. I would say he has the best bends, especially captured in guitar solos, of anybody, and he's influenced me certainly quite a bit. And I think the key to bending is just to have perfect muscle memory, because once you get bending down, as far as the muscle memory, the dexterity it takes to know when you're bending a perfect half step or a perfect whole step or a perfect double whole step, I honestly think that the most important guitar technique is bending. Way more important than alternate picking or sweep picking or tapping or any of those other techniques. Bending is the thing that I think separates the guitar from every other instrument, and what really conveys the most human aspect of playing. With all that said, I'm gonna play the whole Comfortably Numb solo, and I'm gonna show you the exact bend that I'm talking about that I think is very worthwhile of your time. So the bend that I was talking about is the one where I looked at the camera weirdly, and it's that little half step bend, because it really takes a lot of emotion to play that. You just can't help but feel something when you play that particular note of the solo. It's the most meaningful note of the solo in my opinion, and it's also the most technically difficult one to do correctly. So when we have this little build up, it's really, I'm kind of making a weird face because I'm trying really hard to not only maintain the note's timbre, but also give it a little extra juice there, a little vibrato at the end. And it's a little harder to give vibrato to a half step bend than a whole step bend because you have less room to actually waver the note. So if you waver down too far, it's like you're just bending a half step over and over, as opposed to vibrato should really be at the most quarter bends when you're at the top of a pitch. And so with that said, this note, your hand should really act as like a vice grip and be on a sort of axis like this. I opt to put my thumb over the neck when I bend. I've seen people bend with their thumb behind the neck. That just doesn't work for me. I have a kind of Hendrix or Steve Vai approach when it comes to how I grip the guitar neck. I've given this lesson in countless other videos, but a quick 101 on practicing bending is, say we have this note, go down a whole step, be able to nail that pitch and then add the vibrato. And you always want to end with your vibrato going back up to the pitch as opposed to ending with that pitch. So whole step down from a pitch, vibrato. It doesn't matter where you do it, you should be able to bend anywhere on the guitar neck from a half step or whole step below, or if you want to be crazy, I'm not going to break any strings here at Chicago Music Exchange, but I think I almost did. All right, moving on to the next guitar lick that you should know. Next up, we have one of my favorite guitar licks of all time by my favorite guitar player of all time, Jimi Hendrix. And this actually is from a song called Red House, but it isn't part of his guitar solo. It's actually a filler lick that happens in between his vocals. And this is the lick. I'll get into why I love it after I play it. I love it because it makes me make that face. And sorry, it's getting a little loud in here. I guess I'm playing all these licks and people are starting to get real excited with their volume knobs. It tends to happen in guitar stores, you know how it goes. Bear with me. So we can break this up into 3 phrases. Number 1 and number 2. Now here's number 3. It just gets better, progressively better as it goes on until that climactic. You can almost hear Hendrix saying that through his guitar, and that's what I like about this lick is it's just so vocal, and it's so hard to be vocal with the pentatonic scale because it is so widely used by guitar players, but it's just so definitively Hendrix, this whole lick, from the interesting melodic rhythm to the just overall finger tone that he employs to get this guitar to really be angry about how his girlfriend is no longer at that red house way over yonder. So if you wanted to take anything away from this lick, you would take this Hendrixism, which is employed in many different ways. So you can do, or you can do something like, just those two notes are just so innovative. Nobody ever played notes like that before Hendrix. And if you switch the pickup, you can really get something good out of it. For this last lick, I have a jazz master here. It's an Angus Young lick, so I know I should be playing an SG, but I really wanted to play this guitar, and if I do this correctly, it'll sound as much like Angus Young as I possibly can anyways, so here is the final legendary lick that every guitar player should know. So that's pretty much the beginning to the You Shook Me All Night Long guitar solo. And the lick that I really like in there is this very unique use of the pentatonic sound. So we have, now the reason I am calling attention to this is because the best way to get more mileage out of the pentatonic scale in this root position, and really any position of the pentatonic scale, is to play linearly like that as opposed to box shape ways like this. If we play like, automatically it gives it a new feel. So anywhere you are on the pentatonic scale, that can really kind of broaden whatever approach you might be taking. Maybe you're in the box shape like this. You're trying to sound a little bit different. It can really just give you a refreshed sound that doesn't require you to actually learn any new notes or any new scale positions. It just has you play them a little bit differently, and that is what I took from that little segment of Angus Young's guitar solo. That is gonna do it for this episode in Chicago of Legendary Licks. Every guitar player should know these licks, and well, maybe now you know at least one of them, if not all of them. Thanks a lot to Chicago Music Exchange for having me out here on the Guitar Store Tour. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, keep shredding.